Starting now, Ronnie. Good morning, Masechet Pessachim. Today we are on Ayin Tet Amoud Bet, but we're going to go back to Ayin Tet, the bottom of the page. Last 4 lines, we'll do it again one more time. We are in the context of Korban Pesach. There is a rule of Korban Pesach that if the majority of the community is in a state of impurity, the Korban Pesach is still allowed to be brought in. We can still bring it, and we said it's Hutra B'tzibur, it's Dechui B'tzibur, but either way, when the majority of this community is in a state of impurity, the Korban Pesach is allowed to be brought. The question is, what if we were able to know if it's exactly half-half? It's exactly half-half. Let's just read the Mishnah one more time, Ayin Tet, to keep you in context. Nitmakan, you see the Mishnah in the middle of the page with the bold words of Matnisim? Nitmakan, or rubo, so if the community, or most of the community, or shayu kohanim tmeim, or if the kohanim were tmeim, vakal teorim, or even if it's the whole community is tahor, just the kohanim are not pure, yasu betuma, you're allowed to do the Korban Pesach in a state of impurity. So that's what it says. However, nitma mi'utakan, but if there are few individuals, minority, less than 50% that are tameh, ateori nosin atarishon, vatmi nosin et hasheni. So the pure ones do Pesach Rishon, and the impure do Pesach Sheni. So far, so good. So go to the bottom of the page. Last, about 5 lines. So the bottom, third word. Itmar. Everybody sees it? Yochan basar itmar. Yes, Chaim? Mishnah says, it says the Gemara. Itmar. David, you have a Gemara? Yeah. Itmar. Hare shayu Yisrael mechitzat teorin mechitzat min. What if we have 50-50? So half of the community, let's say we were able to count and we really knew exactly that it's not majority. If it's majority are impure, we do the whole Korban Pesach, everybody together. Everybody can do it impure. We cancel out impurity. However, here it's half-half. What do we do? So, umechitzat min. Rav amar mechitza mechitza kirov. It's very interesting. We look according to Rav as 50% as 51%. And Rav Kana amar mechitza mechitza eno kirov. Rav Kana is not so clear, but he says it's not like 50%. What does that mean? It's not like majority. It's not like majority. So Rav says it's majority, and Rav Kana says it's not majority. Explains the Gemara. Rav amar mechitza mechitza kirov. You have it, right? Ayin Tet. Rav amar mechitza mechitza kirov, halanu osin natzman, v'halanu osin natzman. So the pure people will do their own Korban Pesach in a state of purity, because it's like they're a majority. And like we said, if it's the majority of pure people, so that the impure do not do the Korban Pesach, and the pure do not become impure. And halanu osin natzman, and the impure ones, since they consider themselves a majority, and we know that if the majority is impure, so now they're allowed to do their own Korban Pesach also. And they're allowed to do it in a state of impurity. That is, of course, Shitat Rav. Rav Kana amar, mechitza mechitza eno kirov, teori nosin et harishon, utmi nosin et hasheni. So no, we don't consider it like majority. We consider it not like majority. So how does that work? Well, let's say it is 99% tameh. So the pure ones, they still do Korban Pesach, even in a state of impurity. So here, if they're considered minority, so they're allowed to do it. And if they're allowed to do it impure, well, sure, they're allowed to do it pure. So the minority, the pure ones, will do it in a state of purity. And the other ones, the impure ones, well, they're going to be pushed off to Pesach Sheni, which was 1 month later. Because don't forget that if you miss the Pesach Rishon, you have what's on 15th of Iyar, Pesach Sheni. So far, so good. Ike de amre amar Rav Kana mechitza mechitza eno kirov. Teorin osin et harishon utmein en osin lo et harishon velo et hasheni. So the pure ones do the first one, and the impure do not the first Pesach and not the Pesach. Why not? The Gemara explains. Barishon lo avdei de lo aviruba. They can't do Pesach Rishon because they're not in the majority. B'sheni lo avdei de lo avi miuta. And they can't do Pesach Sheni because they're not miut. And Pesach Sheni is only done for a minority, and they're not a minority. So they are stuck those scenarios. Let's just review that one more time to make sure everybody has it before we go further. In general, you have to be pure to do Korban Pesach. You cannot come into the Bet Mikdash and do Korban Pesach in a state of impurity. You know that. If you're in a state of impurity and you are a minority, for example, 95% are pure. There are 5% that are not pure. So what do? We tell them, please wait till the next Pesach, which is Pesach Sheni, 15th Teviyah, and you can bring the Korban Pesach. That's why we eat matzah on Pesach Sheni, just to remind ourselves of this. Now, they both get the mitzvah, and they're allowed to, and the pure ones do it in purity, and the impure wait. What about if it's majority impure? The opposite. 95% is impure, and 5% are pure. What's the halakha? Everybody does the Korban Pesach in a state of impurity, not pure. Because once we give a permission to the majority, which are impure, so the whole halachot are cancelled, and even the pure ones do an impurity. That's a very simple klal that we know till now. The question is, what if it's 50-50? 50 are pure, 50 are impure. How do we look at 50-50? Do we look at 50 as majority, or it doesn't look at majority? Well, Rav says we look at 50% like a majority. So now it's very interesting. So the pure ones, they're on this side, for example, they do it in purity, because for them, they're the majority. So for them, they're allowed to do it only in purity. The impure ones, which is not you, but it's this side, for example, the impure ones, they also feel like they're majority. So they're allowed to do it in a state of impurity as well. Two different groups. They do in purity, they do in impurity. That is Shitat Rav. Rav Kana said something, but it could be explained in two ways. Rav Kana said that they're not considered majority. So what does that mean? It means maybe they're considered minority. So that's the first lashon of Rav Kana. So if they're considered minority, let's go. The pure ones are minority. So what do? Pure ones that are minority allowed to do Korban Pesach, even in impurity. But they don't have to do it in purity. They can also do it in purity. So they're doing the minority, their Korban Pesach, in a state of purity. The impure ones, they're in the minority. Impure, and what does the minority do? They do Pesach Sheni. They do the Pesach Sheni. So they do it in the next month, because right now they're minority, so they just get pushed off like a regular case. Or do we see Rav Kana to mean that they're not majority? They're not majority, but they're not minority. What does it mean? Huh?
He forgot you were giving a
huh? They're not majority and they're not minority. They're in the middle, so they're stuck. They're not majority, but they're also not minority. That means they can't do anything. They can't do today Korban Pesach because they're not majority, and they can't do the Pesach Sheni because they're not the minority. So Rav Kana says, too bad for you, you don't get Korban Pesach. We're going to go now back and forth on this. The Gemara says, Tanan, third. Now let's try to ask a kushya from our Mishnah. We're going to try to challenge. Who's right, Rav Kana or Rav? We're going to try the challenge from our Mishnah.
What's the punishment if they can't do the Korban Pesach?
Nothing. If they're just, because the halakha dictates that they can't, they're not at fault. The punishment for somebody who could do it doesn't mean it's a big punishment of karet.
Yeah.
But not if you can't do it. Okay. So third line, last three words. Tnan. What did we read in our Mishnah? Nitma kahal. Look well. Oruba, let's make a diuk. The majority, said the Mishnah, became tameh. Or shayu kohanim tmeim, or the kohanim became tameh. Habakam teorin yaseh betuma. What do we just say? Ruba hu deavde betuma. Avad paga lo avde berishon. Kashya lerav. Well, we know that you always can have a diuk from a Mishnah. So the diuk, the information from the Mishnah, will give a kushya to Rav. How does that work? What do we say? If the majority is impure, then we do it today. That means that if the majority is impure, we do the Korban Pesach today, do it bituma. Make the information. But half-half, you told me pure. You told me 50%. That means what you didn't say is that half-half. That means half-half doesn't do today. 90% impure does today the Korban Pesach, but 50-50 doesn't do, and that's a kusher for Rav, because Rav said 50-50 everybody does today.
The Shuchet doesn't count at all.
Sure it counts. Sure it counts. What do you mean?
Well, if it's 50-50 of the people that are coming to do it.
Or 50-50 of all of Am Yisrael. We're talking 50-50 of Am Yisrael. You'd have to have AI face recognition to know how to do that. Huh? I'm looking for anybody who knows how to have AI face recognition to track people like in a building, like employees,
cameras.
Cameras that can give a report.
To track the avrichim.
If they come, they didn't come. Does it exist, Yaakov?
Of course. I didn't think that the police, CIA, everybody legal.
In crowding your house. Okay. So we say the diuk over here that palgal no. Palgal doesn't work. You don't bring the korban pesach. It's a kasha de Rav. Kasha de Rav. Amar licha Rav. Rav will explain. Ruba avde kula betuma. When it's majority, 90% is tameh, everybody does, even the 10% pure, in impurity. But palga halu osin natzman, vehalalu osin natzman. Each one does their own. The pure do impurity, and the impure do impurity. So the information of the Mishnah is not a kushya, because the diuk in the Mishnah is still true. What did we medayak in the Mishnah? If majority is impure, we do it today. If not, we don't do it today. No, that's not how you read the Mishnah. If majority is impure, we do it today, everybody in impurity. But if it's half-half, we don't do everybody in purity. We do 50% in impurity, 50% impurity. And that also makes sense with the other part of the Mishnah. Yes, the Gemara accepts. Yes, we have to say that this is true. Achanami mistabra, you know why? The katane seifa. What does it's written in the end of the Mishnah? Mi'utakar teorin osin et harishon utmin osin et hasheni. What do we say in the end of the Mishnah? If only 10% is impure, so the pure ones do today, and the rest they do next month. Let's make a diuk. Mi'utu de'avde b'sheni. Only if it's 10% they do in Pesach Sheni. Aval palga lo. But if it's half-half, they won't do in Pesach Sheni, meaning they're going to do today. So that's also a problem. So we see the diuk of the seif is telling you that in fact, yes, when it's 50-50, it's getting done today. And how will that be according to Rav? Halalu osin natzman, v'halalu osin natzman. So from our Mishnah, each one will do on their own. From our Mishnah, we don't have a kushya on Rav, we have a proof for Rav. Rav said, what 50-50, each one is majority. So that's true, everybody will do Korban Pesach today. But now, from the Mishnah that we learn, that the diuk of the Mishnah is that we do today, the Korban Pesach, when it's 50-50, is a kushya for Rav Kana. Because Rav Kana said we don't do the Korban Pesach today. We do it, according to Rav Kana, the second group doesn't do the Korban Pesach. So it's a kushya. Ve'ada kashya de Rav Kana. Amar licha Rav Kana will answer. Nitmei mi'ut akar teorin osin et harishon. So now if the majority, 10% became tameh, the pure ones will do Pesach Rishon. Nitmein v'tmein osin Pesach Sheni. And like we said on the Mishnah, and the pure ones will do Pesach, and the impure will do Pesach Sheni. What's the diuk? Hapalga teorin osin et harishon, avatmein en osin lo et harishon v'et hasheni. Yes, I have a diuk, and the diuk is if it is the minority impure, so they get pushed off to Pesach Sheni. But if it's half-half, what do we do? Again, always from the information. 90% pure, 10% impure. So the 10% we'll do next month. So you're telling me only if it's 10%, but if it's 50-50, then what? It's done today? No, it's not. That's not the diuk. It's not. Yes, we do not do what's written in Mishnah. Next month, and that could be the opposite of that. Could be either to do today, or the opposite of that could be not to do at all. So the diuk of the Mishnah is that when it's 10% impure, they do next month. When it's 50-50, they don't do at all the Korban Pesach. So Rav Kana will get away with the Mishnah. Good morning, Johnny. Rav Kana will get away with the Mishnah. But that's only good for the Lishna Batra. The Gemara says, Tatinach le Lishna Batra. That's good for the second opinion of Rav Kana. The Rav Kana. Ela lehach nishna damar Rav Kana teorin osin et harishon utmin osin et hasheni ma'ikane memar. But now you have a problem according to Rav Kana. Because the first language he said was that it's 50-50. So the Tower, so what did we say? It was that the Tmeim will do in the Pesach Sheni. The Torah will do today, and the Tmeim will do Pesach Sheni. Ma'ikana memar. Amar lecha Rav Kana hu adin dafilu panga nama nami, even 50-50. Really, the diuk is not a good diuk. Why not? Because really the halacha is 50-50. The teorin osin et harishon, so the pure will do today. Utmin osin et hasheni, and the impure will do next month. V'ad katane miutakan, I did the tane reisha ruba tanunami seifa miut. So why did we write it in such a way in the seifa that you're going to sound like you have a diuk which contradicts his idea? It's just to keep the Mishnah in context, in sync, to say it in a standard fashion. But really, even it's 50-50, they'll do next month. But why did you say mute? Because the Sefer said, the Reisha said Rav. I'll explain one more time. Rav Kana's first opinion. Of course, everybody agrees, Johnny. What I'll recap for you. Everybody agrees, Johnny, that if it is 90% pure and 10% impure, 90% of Klal Yisrael is pure. 10% they were involved in a burial. So the 10% they got to do next month. Very good. Rav Kana says, what happens 50-50? If it's 50-50 pure, 50-50, it's not majority. So he says 50-50, here's what happens. 50-50 is not called majority. It's not called majority, it's called minority. So the minority the pure ones, even if they're a minority, they do today. They don't have to push off. The impure will be pushed off to next month. That's how Rav Kana learns it in one language. The problem with that is an inferration of the Mishnah. You know what's an inferation? A diuk. How do you say in French to infer?
On peut déduire.
Je peux déduire. On peut déduire de la Mishnah ce qui n'est pas marqué. How does it work? What did the Mishnah say? If it's 90% and 10%, the 10% does next month. You told me 10%. Why didn't you tell me 50%? Must be 50% is not like this. Must be 50% is the opposite. Because I'm deducting from what you told me. I'm inferring from what you told me. Be careful what you tell me. Because I learn a lot more from what you don't say than what you say. You said this, that means you mean this. You know, they asked the Shadchan, is it a pretty girl? So she has nice eyes. What does it mean she has nice eyes? It means the rest is not nice. Yeah. So what you're saying, I'm for the opposite. So if I tell you 90% does and 10% doesn't do, on the 10%, that means 50-50. Right?
You like that one? She can walk.
So if I say 90% does and 10% doesn't do, that means 50% that does next month. That means the 50-50, they don't do next month. When do they do? They should be doing when? So says Rav Kana, no. Even when it's 50-50, they do next month. But why did they write it Rov and Miut? To keep it in standard. When I tell you the first part, the Seifa, if it's majority, I write minority. But it's even, not necessarily minority, it's even 50-50. Majority and 50-50. Just to keep, but why do we write it in a way that sounds like I infer something which is not true? To keep this language standard. Sometimes your inferration we're going to go for standard in the Mishnah. Rav, Miut, but it's not Dafka. It's Rav and 50-50. That's the way to answer this. Okay, now we're going to just recap that in the Braitas. Here it gets it. Not so hard here. Tanya kibate de Rav, Tanya tigred Rav Kana, ketrei lishne. So now we're going to have Braitot, each Braita. Ein tet Amoud bet. You have us where we're? First one line is Nami Seifa. It's about 8 lines from the beginning. Okay, Tanya kibate de Rav, Tanya kede Rav Kana. So we have a Braita like Rav, we have a Braita like Rav Kana, ketrei lishne. And even the two languages of Rav Kana. Tanya kede kabete de Rav. We have one Braita going like Rav. Hayu Israel mechitzat teorin umechitzat mei. So this is going like Rav. 50-50. Am Israel is 50% pure, 50% not pure. Halalu osin natzman, v'halalu osin natzman. Each one will do their own. Like we said that Shitad Rav, right? Each one is considered majority. Each one does their own korban. Tanya kede kidishna kama de Rav Kana. Now we have a Braita going like the first language of Rav Kana. Hare shayu Israel mechitzat teorin mechitzat mein, 50-50, 50% pure, 50% not pure. Osin et harishon, teorin osin et harishon. So the pure ones do Pesach first Pesach. Utmein osin et hasheni. And the impure ones do Pesach sheni. That was the second language, that was the first language of Rav Kana. V'tana kedishna batra de Rav Kana. And then the second opinion of Rav Kana. Haresh ayu Yisrael mechitzat teorin umechitzat mein. If they were 50-50, teorin osin et harishon, like we always know. The pure ones do it today on the first Pesach. Utmein eno osin no et harishon v'no et hasheni. They don't do not the first Pesach and not the second Pesach. They do absolutely nothing. So these were the three opinions. Remember, first opinion of Rav, first two opinions of Rav Kana. So the Gemara says, oh, now we have three braitot. Ole Rav le'lishna batra de Rav Kana. So according to Rav, and according to the second opinion of Rav Kana, which of course Rav says that they both do today. According to the second opinion of Rav Kana, only the pure ones do today, and the second ones do never. So what are they going to do? Hadetanya teorin osin et harishon utmin et hasheni echa mitartzena. So how will he answer of that baita? In other words, if I ask Rav, here we have 50% pure, 50% impure. We come to Rav, we say, Rav, what's the halakha today? The halakha today is that everybody does Korban Pesach. Very good. And Rav Khan, everybody does the Korban Pesach today. But what will you do, Rav, with the Braita that says very clearly that if it's 50-50, the pure ones do today and the impure do next month? How will you answer that, Rav? There's a Braita going against you. Clear, Chaim?
What does he hold? 50-50 Zol?
Yes, he holds 50-50 Zol. So the answer like this. Kigon, that Braita is talking about a very specific case. Kigon, Hashayu Yisrael mechetzat teorin umechetzat me'in. V'nashim mashlimot litme'im. Yes, it's 50-50. But you know why it's 50-50? Because the women are included. The women are included in this case. Ikasavar nashim berishon reshut. But really, what it is that women on Pesach don't really need to bring the Korban Pesach on the first Korban Pesach. Dan nashim tmein havu. Dan nashim tmein ve'avu le'tmein. Take away the impure women, which were bringing you up to this count. Ve'avu le'tmein miuta. Umiuta yitchu le'Pesach sheni. And the women are pissed off to Pesach sheni. Meaning, if you will ask Rav, what's the scenario? Rav explains a Braita like this. That seems to contradict you. It doesn't contradict me at all. 50-50, what we're talking about is 50-50 Am Yisrael. But it's including the ladies. And the ladies are bringing up the count of impure to be the same with the pure. So there is majority of men are pure. But if you add the ladies, the ladies were so impure that it makes it 50-50. Take away the ladies, it's going to be 60-40. And the ladies don't even have to do Korban Pesach. It's optional. They can if they want, but they don't count on the cheshbon. So this is just talking about a case where we hold, this Braita holds that Pesach Sheni for ladies, Pesach Rishon for ladies is optional. Therefore, we take him out of account. And we're just talking about a standard case of the 60 and 40, and that's why the pure ones do today and the impure do next month. But how will the Rav, okay. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing, but also we're going to use the first language of Rav Kana. Hadetanya teorin osin et harishon utmin en osin lo et harishon v'lo et hasheni echem mitartzena. So now we have a second Braita which again contradicts you, Rav. Rav, you said 50-50 everybody does today. We have a Braita that says only the pure do today, and the second one don't do ever. How will you answer up that Braita? So Rav is going to have to answer it, and Rav Kana is going to have to answer. Rav mitaretz Rav answers like matritz le kegon. He explains like this: Shayu Yisrael mechetzat tmeim umechetzat teorin v'nashim odfot ala teorin. So what do we have over here? Is we have 50-50, but the women are actually more than the men. Because var nashim berishon chova. And the way it works is that the women for the Korban Pesach, this opinion holds that they have to do first Pesach, not the second one. Ubesheni reshut, barishon lo avdei, devu lemiut. So now what happens? I'm reading the Rashi. Kigon shayu Yisrael hazecharim mechitzat teorin mechitzat me'in שאתה מונה נשים עמהן, רבים טהורין הנטמאים. So Rashi's explaining what we're talking about. Men are 50-50. But when you add the women, now the women are majority tahor. So now it's 60-40. So what happens? So the impure will not do on this day. Why will they not do? Because they have to do in Pesach Sheni because they are a minority. But then when you get to Pesach Sheni, you take away the women. Because now the women don't have to do Pesach Sheni. Now it turns out that the people who are impure are the majority. And you don't do the Pesach Sheni if you're the majority. So that's why they get cancelled out and they don't have any Korban Pesach. That is Shitat Rav, the way he's going to explain that second baita. Complicated, right? The Gemara says, Umiutam lo avdei berishon, ubesheni lo avdei dan nashim minai, ubepalga upalga, upalga kamel lo avdei. And actually what's going to be, it's going to turn back to 50-50. And we know that 50-50 won't do on Pesach Sheni, the Korban Pesach. Lo avdei b'sheni. Uli Rav Kana. Now what about Rav Kana? Damar palga nami avdei b'sheni. Now Rav Kana also said halacha that Pesach Rishon, if it's 50-50, the pure ones do today and the impure do next month. How will he answer up this baita that say that nobody does in the second months? Hachi mitaritzte. Kigon shayu Yisrael, we're almost done this. Kigon shayu Yisrael mechitzat teorin, mechitzat tmein. Now we had the Jews were 50-50. V'nashim mashlimot leteorin. But the reason they got to 50-50 is because they had the women. So basically it was 60-40, but now the women make it 50-50. Kasavar nashim rishon chova ubeshenei rishut. Now Rav Kana is going to say that the women have to do in the first month and they don't do in the second month. Ubeshenei rishut. Barishon lo avdei de'avu lepalga upalga. So according to Rav Kana, the halacha is that 50-50 is not considered a majority. It's considered a minority. So therefore in the first month, since it's 50-50, they won't do. The pure will do, but the impure won't do. Upalga upalga. Upalga. Davude palga upalga. Upalga b'rishon lo avde. B'sheni nami lo avde. Dan nashim minau min ha'teorin. Havu le'tmein ve'ruba. So now if we take the women in the second month, havu le'tmein, then the majority will be the impure.
Same thing we just said.
Ve'ruba lo avdi b'sheni. And the majority doesn't do the next month. Basically the same thing, but Rav Kana shitato. So far so good. One little smart push, and then it's very interesting next one. Rav Kana had the Tanya. So now we just have to see what does Rav Kana do with the Braita that goes like Rav. What do we say that Braita goes to Rav is 50-50? What's the halacha? No sin natzman and sin natzman. Each one does on their own. So how can Rav Kana? There's a clear Braita now like Rav Kana. Rav Kana says the impure ones never do on Pesach Rishon when they're 50-50. Here the Braita says they do. Natzman echi mitaritzlim. אמר לך רב כהנא תנאי, איכא למאן דאמר מחצה מחצה קירוב, ואיכא למאן דאמר מחצה מחצה אין לו קירוב. Yes, that's a מחלוקת תנאים. It's two opinions. Don't forget, Rav Kana and Rav are Amoraim, and if there's earlier opinions which are Tanaim, he can choose one of them. So it's true that there's a Braita that goes not like him. That's one opinion, the Tanaim, and I go like the other opinion. One little more stretch. Interesting. Look what it says here. Gufa harei Yisrael mechitza. We finished that whole cheshbon. It was a hard cheshbon. Gufa harei shayu Yisrael mechitza u'mechitza teorim. So now, if we have the Jews 50-50, like we said, according to Rav, each one does their own. Hayut min odfina neteorim. But now if it's 51% tameh, afilu echad, even one Jew more. It's 50-50 like the votes over here, by one vote. There one more that is impure. What's the halacha? Yasu betuma. Everybody does in a state of impurity, even for one Jew. Because we know that the rule we said before that we don't split up. Everybody does the same way. If the impure are allowed to do an impurity, so everybody does the same way. That is Tanakama. Rabbi Eliezer ben Mati Omer en yachid machia. No, one is not enough of a winning vote. By the way, does it work like that in elections? That it has to be like more than one vote, or even one vote works? Huh? Even in America, also everywhere. Yeah. So there's some places where it's not enough one, you need more than one. Oh, yeah? Here, I don't know, in halakha sometimes you like that. Here the one is not enough to clinch it. Not this way and not this way. That's according to Rabbi Eliezer. You know why? The pasuk says you cannot shech korban pesach bechad shechecha. What is the pshat over here? So the pshat, the simple pshat, is you can't do korban pesach in a regular altar. You got to do it in the Bet Mikdash. You can't take in your backyard, in your gate, in your city, and do your korban pesach. You're not allowed to do that. So lo tuchad lizboach et pesach bechad shechecha. You can't now. But why did they add the word over here bechad shechecha? It could have said, don't do korban pesach b'sharecha in your town. The word echad, it means we don't decide korban pesach because of one. That's the drash. Lo tuchad lizboach et pesach bechad sharecha. Rabbi Shimon omer afilu shevet echad. So therefore we don't go with one. You gotta
So
doesn't count. Two. Says Rabbi Shimon, omer afilu shevet echad tameh v'shar kol hashvatim teorin. How about this? 11 shvatim pure, one tameh. Halu sin natzman, hanun natzman. Ma'itama de Rabbi Shimon kasvar shevet echad ikhe kan. According to Rabbi Shimon, one shevet is called the whole Am Yisrael. They're considered Am Yisrael. You know where he learns it from? Because because Yaakov Avinu got a blessing. He got a blessing from the angel. It said, and the angel told him that kan ugoyim yitzu mimecha. You're gonna have a cow that's coming out of you. But it was only Binyamin that came out. He had all the 11 kids, and the 12th Shevet, Binyamin, was only born after that incident with the angel of Esav. So since it was only after the angel of Esav, and you see that he called him Akam, we're just getting to the dot, it's right here, two lines. You get, because we're this is our Amoud today.
Oh, this is Amoud today?
Yeah, so I need to get it. Okay, so you see that a cow, Binyamin is kind of a cow. So this is a whole cow. So therefore, they're going to still do the Korban Pesach in impurity, because it's like the whole Am Yisrael is impure. One Shevet is like a whole Am Yisrael. Interesting. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, afilu Shevet echad tameh, u'shar kol hashvitim teorin, yasu tuma. Everybody does betuma according to Rabbi Yehuda. You know why? Shen korban tzibur chaluk. Because we don't switch the korban tzibur. Everybody does the same. Rabbi Yehuda says a shevet ikra kam. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, a shevet is called a kam. Ravulu padga or panga. And it's considered 50-50. Meaning, you're like half of Am Yisrael. You're only one shevet, but you're a whole cow. And the whole rest is one cow. So it's like 50-50. And 50-50, then korban tzibur chaluk. Rabbi kulu b'tuma. Everybody will do it in a state of tuma. Beruchim to you.